cool. Darren, it's been a long time. How the heck are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Working from home. This is my office. It's beautiful,
Looks
but I'm
nice.
doing pretty well. Uh, it's been it's been real busy. Um, the transition from home to office or from office to home was not that bad, but it didn't slow down at all for me.
So like not even one bit.
No, I think I blinked for about 3 days, and then after that, it was just back back to work as usual, just in a different place. So
You know, I had a similar thing with my work. I mean, we're in pharmaceuticals, so they're essential business. Okay, well, I guess we're gonna keep her going then. Nothing changed, just a little more pressure.
yeah, I bet.
So you were asking about the podcast earlier. Was it how it got its name? Is that the question?
Yes, that's my question.
So this is back in UC Davis. I had a friend of mine who's the co-host, Julian. We're both talking to each other, and we're becoming fast friends. And eventually, this term showed up called "man talk," and what it was referring to we need to have a true and direct conversation about problems. That's what it's referring to. So when we do that, it would be get up, everybody. We need to do a man talk Friday night for some reason. We've got a lot of problems on our plate. And it really is the mankind talk podcast, but
Hmm.
it just doesn't have the same ring. And we put that in the about page so that way people could understand. I know people will still criticize the name because it sounds a little. It doesn't sound quite PC, but we kept it because that's actually what we'd say to each other. So it's not about putting one sex over the other. It's just no, that was the vernacular. We said we need to have a man talk. So by de facto, we kept the name, and now we've got the podcast name. So, and we saved the Gmail and the YouTube channel before, and no one took it yet. So that's how
That's
it came to
awesome.
be. Yeah, that was a kickback to 2011. So
Oh
in,
wow.
in 2011, that's when we started this, and we became friends in 2010, and we picked up the podcast again. Well, the format of it was all unrecorded back then, but now it's recorded. And we started doing that because we wanted to give time for real topics,
Hmm.
and something we could look back on and say, this is what mattered to us, and this is what we're going to discuss for our betterment and for everyone else's. So that's how the podcast came to be.
That's cool. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, it started in 2019, and it was just a casual conversation between me and Julian. And he brought up, hey, should we do a podcast? And I go, are you serious? And we thought about it for a little bit. Yeah, we actually do want to do it. He showed me how to use the cameras and how to troubleshoot mics and do the best you can with things. And it was really cool. I appreciated the fact that he showed me what he did. And I'm not perfect at it, but he showed me enough to be able to run the recording, check some mics here or there. Believe me, like one thing we could have done during the setup is, oh, how come I don't just turn down my mic so that way our voices sound a little better. So I didn't check everything, but he's gotten me to the point where I can at least run it. And he's good with Photoshop and good with making the podcast thumbnails and a really good dialoguer when it comes to new ideas. So I always appreciate that about Julian. So that's the podcast history, and it's all online if you ever want to see anything. There's timestamps for you to click on, and if you're bored with one, you say, yeah, forget that one sucks, and click on one that actually matters. That's how it was designed. I mean, because that's how people look at podcasts. Not everyone's going to want to
Yeah,
watch it all the way through.
yeah, that was cool. I've only seen. I didn't do my research. Didn't read the about page, but I was just looking at some of the stuff and I found a couple of sporadic episodes, and I really like what you guys have to say and what you're talking about. I just needed some clarification before I jumped in.
Yeah, it's not. it's not so easy to figure out from the title exactly what it's about until you hear some of the story and maybe go to the about page. I'm not going to the about page on every website, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So what was that other thing you wanted me to talk about before we get going here? Was it the...
Oh, I was asking you about
Was it
how
taking...
have you been able to keep up with friends post college?
Post college? So what we're doing, and this is actually one of the functions of the podcast. It's a way to record the time. This is rather new though. So before that, it was finding a way to pencil it in for phone calls, or for if we were going to do something online together, like get on Red Dead Redemption 2, or do something like that. Tonight, actually, we're going to be doing something for Civilization, so Civ 6. That's one of the things we're going to be doing.
Man,
So
Civilization is on 6 now?
yeah, they're on 6.
Okay.
So just for clarification for people who don't know about Civ 4, we played in band together in around 2009, 2010. We were playing the Civ 4 theme, so it's come a long way since then. I know, crazy. So finding ways to have habitual time, that part's harder because, well, we're kind of in different spaces now, especially you and me. I mean, you're on the other side of the country. I'm over here on the West Coast. By default, we're going to be doing different stuff, so it's hard to plan. But when something important comes up to plan for, you just need to pencil it in and commit. And a lot of people have a hard time doing that. But some people don't. I've got some mentees from college that I still talk to. I still have people that are in the area that I actually don't talk to very often, which is funny enough how that works, because they're still not close enough in the circle. But finding time for the people that really matter to you, I know it's going to be harder as life gets more complicated, but while the time exists, find it, because one of the things I heard from, this came probably about high school. There was one of these forums, and it said about some of the things people regretted when they died. And one of them was, I wish I invested in the people I loved more. And it said friends and family. And if you don't do it now, quitting is forever. Quote Jason McCarthy. So quitting is forever. What he means by that is you'll continue to quit as a habit if you don't find a way around that. So I took both of those things to heart, and I've been finding ways to do it. It also, I mean, everyone's glad to do it, but we don't because it takes time. And so finding a way to break through seems to be the key, and putting it on paper, putting it on the calendar.
Yeah, that's definitely something. I asked that question because it's been something I've been working on this past year. It's just trying to get back to reconnecting with friends and family that I kind of just lost touch with. And I mean, part of that has to do with kind of my post-college journey is not typical, and we'll get to that later, but don't look so excited, Jake.
I'm excited. Well, because this is finally a way to get it all on one conversation. I'm not used to that. You had a busy life the last few years.
Yeah, I have. And it's not traditional. That's been just the interesting thing, that my journey has not, there are a few people who I've seen that have mirrored it. You're probably the closest that I've seen. And even that's not the same. But.
Oh, no, not even, because, I mean, you're talking to a guy who decided to drop everything and go to upstream oil, then come back once oil crashed and get into pharmaceuticals, which is weird. Who does that? I mean, most pharmaceutical guys go, oil? I don't want anything to do with you. So that was kind of weird. And I guess before we get into going into your background, I just want to tell the audience about the background between us from my perspective. So Darren and I became friends in middle school over in around 2004. And he's one of the main reasons for being encouraged in high school when things just a lot of things went wrong in those years, and Darren kind of saw me in my worst, and he was one of those friends that you know you've got a good friend when they're there at your worst and your best. So that's one of the reasons why I even have him on the podcast to begin with, is he's invested in my life in a way that is significant. So that's my perspective on Darren and I's friendship over the last few years.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that, Jacob. Yeah, and you know, it was Jacob. You were there for me too. It may have looked a little different, but you were there when I was just trying to figure my life out and trying to get through it all. I remember when you were taking, I think it was in high school, you were asking me to help you with calculus homework. And I remember just being like, oh, Lord, man, you picked the wrong guy for this. But you were really, really excited to learn about it with me and from me, and that was awesome. And I really enjoyed that. And you were one of those friends who it didn't matter what was going on. Like you always seemed to make time for me and like invest in me time and energy wise, and I always appreciated that.
It showed up, man, and I'll never forget how many countless times I'm in your truck and we're driving back to my place. Those were the the real tough times were shared in that truck, just talking back and forth. Where, dude, you know, the minute I got to go back into my house, I got to get back to homework. Yeah, me too. I might put it off though. What? Then we get to going about that, or the countless Xbox games that we played, or the band events we did. Just all of it added up. But when things just seem too busy, we seem to find time to really settle down and just recalibrate for the next challenge. And that mattered that mattered a lot to me, because there was just so much against us at that time. I mean, we're trying to get into college. We got to show them that we're doing our best, and you're competing with these people essentially around the world, but really around the United States, and they just had such a better system for getting their stuff together. So we figured we have to throw our whole act together if we want to break out of Porterville and find a way to get into the world properly. And we did. It took a lot of work.
Yeah, it was not easy.
It wasn't easy in the slightest. Every day there's some new challenge, and then, oh, my weekend's ruined. Why? Oh, we got to do band again. Oh, right, I forgot about that. I was focused on my chemistry test that I've got on Monday. I don't know how all this is going to fit in. Yeah, I don't know. How many people in your AP class? Oh, 6. You know, 6 people. And it's the next year they didn't even have it because they go, oh, forget this. We're not going to have only 6 people classes.
Yeah, that was some interesting times. Yeah, high school was wacky for me. It was just, I was like a human ping pong ball for the last 3 years, probably just flying around, putting out fires and trying to make sure trying to get everything done. So
yeah, school, polo, band, just, and then if you wanted to do a job here or there, oh, where's that time going to come from? Oh dear.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell the employer that you have to leave at 3 p.m. to go to water polo practice in the middle of the summer. I had to put that off and hope that they scheduled it later when I worked for the contractors I worked for. Thankfully, they were good friends, so I was able to work around it. But it was definitely an interesting time.
Yeah, agreed. So with all that put on the table, Darren, what's your background now?
Oh man, so we talked a little bit about high school, and my background now. So after high school, so after leaving Porterville with Jacob, I ended up going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I got into the bioresource and agricultural engineering department there. This And so I spent 5 years in San Luis Obispo. Yeah, I did a victory lap because I needed it. Because college kind of started as a, after the just running everywhere in high school. Like the first quarter, I said, you know what, I'm not going to do anything. Like, I'm not going to say yes to anything in this first quarter, because that was my go-to move in high school. So I spent the first quarter like kind of hunkered down, and then winter rolled around and started saying yes to stuff again. So I got filled up all sorts of stuff. But I went through and a little bit about bioresource and agricultural engineering. It's kind of a weird major. Even in my current job, they're kind of sister colleges out in Tennessee, and they're like, that guy got that major or that degree? And it's like, yeah, they did, but I kind of like that they did personally, because you had to take all your under level classes were all just standard engineering classes. So I took thermodynamics along with the EE. Well, the EEs didn't take thermodynamics, but the civils and the mechanicals and all those guys took the same stuff as them. Just had some different applications. I worked on a tractor instead of an automobile, or I focused on irrigation hydraulics instead of piping and other stuff, or like stormwater. So, and then so I graduated after year 5, and then promptly moved to Chico with my soon-to-be wife. So we had started dating my senior year, well, second senior year, and then we moved up to Chico because she got into the anthropology department up there, and so she was finishing up the last half of her bachelor's up there. So spent about 9 months looking for work. It was kind of rough getting out of college, expecting to like go into the workforce and do engineering, and then nah, that didn't happen. I didn't have any contacts, didn't know anybody up there, so spent about 9 months kind of, well, I think it was more like 6, trying to figure out what I was doing, and then eventually just got a job at a box factory. We literally made a lot of 6-pack carriers and just cardboard boxes for stuff. But that was a super weird time for me because even though I was working in a box factory, and I mean, I was doing simple stuff like taping boxes. Like, it came off the end of the line and I just taped it and made sure it went to the next part. But it was kind of interesting because after about 6 weeks or so, I started getting in and started finding stuff that I could use my engineering background on. And I actually got to know the mechanical engineer who was sitting there working on the, he was doing all the quality control and kind of production tuning for that. And so I got to know him and kind of worked around, did that. So that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work. And I was ripped after that. And then I went after about 9 months of that, I was able to find my first engineering job doing wastewater and landfill design. So did that for about a year. Actually, it was about a year on the day. Then I got married and moved to Tennessee. Again, following my now wife, because she got into University of Tennessee, Knoxville for forensic anthropology. So I did a similar thing, except a lot further. Moved out, didn't know anybody, out here. So spent a little interim time just kind of trying to figure it out again. And then I started brewing beer, which was also really enjoyed that. I don't think I've found a job that I've hated yet, which is surprising. Um, but so I I worked as in a brewery for a year and a half, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of process work. How do I get this, hot boiling liquid down to 68 and in this container without getting with, while maintaining sanitation, and how to do it the fastest and best way possible. Um, and so I did that. Really enjoyed it. Got to know how to brew pretty well, at least with big boy toys. I've homebrewed since, and it's not been the same. I'm just like, what? I don't even have. I don't have a. I don't even have a thermometer. What is this? Could you imagine trying to do your job, Jacob, without like the toys and measurement tools that you have? Like, it's rough.
It's pretty rough. I mean, no temperature indicator transmitter, no level indicator, no way to automatically change the valving, no way to vent. So all your stuff just goes into the room, and okay, it's just gonna smell like this today. All right, it's gonna smell like this till it. Okay. No way to drum it off very well, except for maybe that one carboy or something you got left over. Yeah, that'd be pretty rough, man. Got a lot of problems to solve that are pretty early on in the design process, so it's painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I enjoyed that, but I soon figured out that the microbrewery didn't really have a space for two engineers. The head brewer was actually, he'd worked as an engineer for a short period of time, and then he started head brewing, and so that place couldn't really hold the two of us. I mean, I was sitting around waiting for stuff to break, and as soon as I figured that out, I was like, oh no, I got to get out. If I want things to break in the brew house because I want to fix them, that's bad. It's real bad. So I finally figured out and got to doing what I do now, which is I do civil site design in Knoxville, so Tennessee. So I've been doing that for about 2.5 years now.
So 2.5 years of civil site design, and you kind of help with a varied amount of projects. It's not like just one thing. Because people have asked, and I go, I just know Darren does a fair amount of general purpose engineering design, and it goes through a lot of review.
Yeah. Well, civil site design, the main cool. It's really broad based, and so honestly, my major really helped me for that because I've got to know at least a little bit about electrical. I've got to know at least a little bit about kind of mechanical and plumbing, and a lot of the probably what you would consider standard engineering design is focused towards stormwater and wastewater. So it's really heavy on the hydraulics side, but you've also got a lot of construction side engineering. So a lot of quantity takeoffs and things like that, making sure that I'm not telling this contractor to move 220,000 cubic yards of dirt when I don't need to. But it's just a weird mix. It forces you to interact with a lot of different disciplines. I work with architects all the time. I work with landscape architects. I don't do structural. I do not. I draw the line.
That's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much my kind of thing. That's my kind of line. But besides that, I mean, I do wastewater stuff. I do stormwater design. I do roadway design, like small, like take most of your like large pieces of civil engineering, and I do smaller chunks of them. So like a transportation guy that just does giant roadways, I do the same thing on a driveway. I've got similar design principles I got to look for Granted, my traffic's not flying at 70 miles an hour, but same thing, you know. So it's kind of a mishmash and a smattering.
Got it. Okay, so a little bit of everything, more on the small scale, but you got to know a varied amount of engineering disciplines to do it. Can't just be bioresource and agricultural engineering. It's you gotta spider web it out a little bit.
Yep.
Cool.
You got to know kind of if you've got, you know, someone tells you they need to put something here. A lot of it is really coordination and taking all the disciplines and pulling them into one site. So, you know, an architect, you can have a great architect who gives you this awesome building, but if it doesn't fit in the site, you got to be able to say, hey, it doesn't work. Same thing with your landscape architect. If they want to go design this crazy awesome site and you say, hey man, that's not going to work. You got to know, and you have to approach them and have most of them are quantitative people or qualitative, but you've got to be able to approach them and say, hey, this isn't really going to work and this is why. And you got to be able to, you know, make sure that everything meshes together right.
Got it. Yeah. Oh man, that's so boundary conditions. Yeah. I could think of a few ways that. So I need to talk to you about this design. Yeah. Anyway, so from everything you've talked about to get in this point, what are some of the hardest things to be able to overcome that you've had to deal with in your life so far?
I think some of the really hard things. College was not easy for me. It was rough. I spent a lot of time in college. I listened to some of your previous podcasts, and you talked about creating like a tight-knit group with people who, you know, all had a similar mindset and were in the same classes. I never really got that. So I felt like I was doing this whole design thing by myself, or engineering program by myself, and I had my hands in like 7 different things. So I just felt like I wasn't going to make it the whole time. So that was just rough. I remember.
Wow.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's just. So I felt like that the second year. In the first year. But when the third year kicked in, things got hard enough where I think people kind of looked left and right and go, we can't do this solo thing anymore. Which was really healthy. I wish someone said that, you know, maybe a year and a half before, but better late than never. My second year, I started to get something going, but it was this hodgepodge group, which was better than nothing, like what you're talking about. It's better than nothing. This is like a makeshift study group just because we have to, but it wasn't tight-knit until that third year. That third year, I really started to see some backup that I was just, wow, I wouldn't have made it without him. And same thing with the makeshift group. It's just, there was something about when you're really on the same synergy, that's when I'm going, okay, I finally got something.
Yeah. So that was, like I said, I envy you, and I too wish somebody had said, hey, this is what you need to do real early. Or at least maybe I should have listened to them. I think there was stuff out there telling me what to do, but I wasn't paying attention. So I mean, that was a difficult time for me. And then both of my moves were really hard. Like I had reasons behind them. Like I had good reasons behind them, but it was really hard and really, countercultural. It felt like to see, all my engineering friends going out and they've got a job straight out, and I'm up there sitting around trying to find work. That was really hard, and kind of just fed into all the stuff that I had brought out of college. All that you're never gonna make it, mindset is not great. But I was able to, I mean, I was able to get out of those with just kind of baby steps. Like, do what I can, and somebody will figure it out sooner or later. And that's thankfully what happened. But both those moves were really tough, and college was not. It was not the cheerful, happy time that a lot of people do. Like, it was. I had some really great times. I had some really great experiences with people. I got to meet some awesome people, and got to grow really close with people. But if I were to paint it with a broad brush, it would not be sunshine and daisies. That's for sure.
It's them, and then I mean, we both decide we're going to do something so out of our comfort zone, but so get that foundation of life going by all means necessary, and we just committed to it. But when you make a commitment like that, it's just, well, that doesn't make it any easier climbing up the hill, right? Every midterm, every final, every study night, and you just feel like it's going to take forever to get there, and I'm not even really halfway. I'm kind of subpar in my classes, maybe par on a good day, and you're just kind of downstream without a paddle.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some days in college I don't think I'd ever want to relive. But granted, towards the end, it really did brighten up a lot, which that's crazy. So your whole time, it was really like a lone survivor kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about those kind of mishmash groups. I think that was the closest thing I ever got, because I was doing stuff inside and outside of my major. So, like, there were a group of people in my major that they had formed a real tight knit group. I think by the end of year one, like, they knew what was up, and they got really tight knit, and they did really well throughout college. But I was kind of outside of that group. Part of it was to do with that initial mindset of, like, I'm not going to do anything this first quarter, because they really just kind of latched onto each other. Because I think my graduating class was like 30 or 40, so 15 of them kind of just clumped together and hunkered down, and most of them did really well that way. But most of the time, I just felt like, I spend part of my time over here with these people, and then I stop doing that, and then I go spend part of my time over here with these people. So, that synergy kind of never really got going. It was some places it was kind of sort of there, but a lot of them it was just not there. I also tended to, like, I've always liked to find people who are, a couple years ahead of me, and go try and hang out with those people. Yeah, fancy. Who does that? Who does that?
You talking to me?
Yeah, who does that? So that was something that I always tried to find. So that was really hard, because a lot of the people that I wanted to be really good friends with, they just weren't taking the same classes as me. They were taking Calc 3 when I was still struggling through Calc 1, or all that stuff.
Yeah, you're talking about me in 2004 going, what's 8th grade like? And then 2007, what's chemistry like? Just looking over the fence. Yeah, no, for me, that's what I want to know. Well, how bad's it going to be? Is it going to be any better, worse, good, bad? Should I get ready now? Those are good questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that a lot. I kept doing that, by the way. In fact, you could argue that I totally did that in Bible study, to the point where I'm talking to people 60, 70 plus in age. So I'm just, okay, maxed out. Finally got there. That's crazy. What have you learned through all this about balancing your personal life and work life?
One of the things for me that kind of hits home is that it's really my responsibility to balance it. You know, where I work is wonderful now, and my boss is really encouraging and he really looks out for me. We frequently have discussions about, hey, you know, you might want to cut back a little bit, or, you know, you're doing really well, but we need to consider these things. Like, we have a discussion about work-life balance a lot. Um, but he also doesn't complain if I put in extra time to get something done because it needs to get done. Um, so really what I've learned and been trying to figure out over the past couple years is that it's really my responsibility. And putting it on somebody else to kind of take care of my time management or, you know, personal care or work-life balance, it's never really going to work that well. I mean, I tried to do that with my wife for a while, but I just get, you know, I get frustrated at myself and her at the same time, which doesn't help anybody. So, you know, recently I've been working on that. It's been a new development. Um, and some of that is just, I have to schedule time for me. I cannot just let it go. I can't just be like, oh, I'll hang out. I'll have some alone time later. Um, I mean, I figured out pretty early in college that I was fairly introverted compared to a lot of people. Um, but it wasn't until several years after college that I was reminded that, you know, this is how I generate energy. I can't, you know, just push past that. That if I push past that or I push outside of that zone, you know, I can only do that for so long before I'm not the same person. Um, I'm not the positive side of Darren that people want to know. I am, you know, internally mad that people are taking up my time that I am freely giving to them. And that's just not healthy. It's not great.
Preach it, man.
And
That is exactly what I try and tell people about being an introvert. That some people just don't get is that if you do not let me go and hide for a little bit and just kind of compose, you will find that my sarcasm and pessimist attitudes are going to start just flying, and they're going to start flaring up, and it won't be natural. It'll be just it's because I'm not getting enough time away to I'm not energized, and you're taking it away from me. So I won't be that nice, you know.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's funny because a lot of people don't get it either. I know as an introvert, sometimes like people can't read that they just think I was being really nice, and I was like, oh man, I was sarcastic and just wanted to punch you the whole time. I know you're a great person and all, but I did not want to be around you right now. So, uh, yeah, it's interesting. And
Some people don't get it.
I think that honestly, the current situation has probably sparked people to figure it out. I've seen some stuff about, you know, where people talk about introversion and extroversion. And just to be clear, I'm talking about how you generate energy and like create energy and receive energy versus, you know, some people just think, oh, you're super happy and outgoing. You must be an extrovert. Um, and I was thankful to know several influential people in college who were complete introverts, but they could be at the front of the room, they could be talking energized, but they had like a clock, and you know, they kind of just looked at their watch and they were out. Didn't matter what was going on,
Yeah.
they were done. But most people, when we talked about it, they're like, oh yeah, he's an extrovert. It's like, no, he's not. He is not at all.
Yeah, you've been played. He had
Yes.
you caught him when he had energy, but now he's got to go recover. Yeah, can't stress that enough. For introverts, we need to have time away from everybody so we can, when we see you again, we'll be actually glad to see you and not angry
Yes.
or upset or frustrated or inflamed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just best for everybody. It's just that's just the way it is too. It's not like we chose to be this way. It's just part of us.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's true. And so yeah, some of the things that I've had to do is just scheduling time. Just put it in my calendar, and don't let other people's wants and needs erode it. For a long time, I struggled with anybody who asked a question or had even the smallest request. I would immediately jump to it. Even if I had a bunch of stuff that I needed to do that was personally motivating, like I've been climbing recently, and that was a big that was a big step for me when I figured out that climbing was a thing that I do that isn't for anybody else, and that it's important for me to do it. You know, like you said, I am a much happier person when I go and climb and take the time and kind of reserve my energy. Um, and at the start of it, there was a lot of feelings of like guilt, like, oh, I'm taking this time for myself. I'm being selfish. And so anybody who was like, hey, can you help me come do this thing? I would push that off and be like, oh, I was going to go climbing, but I'll go help them. And I soon realized, well, not soon, but I eventually realized that, you know, that wasn't good in the long term. Like it may have been really nice for them in that instant moment, but I was in trouble for the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, the secondary effects that took place from that. I mean, and then that's not fair to the people later. I mean, cool, you know, person A was satisfied, but maybe persons B through D in the next 2 to 3 days might not be seeing kind Darren.
Yes. And so, yeah, that was one of the things that I figured out that I'm still working on it. And that's another thing I figured out is, you know, it's always moving. It's never a stable target for me. I mean, I finally got a routine like about February and March. I was like, yeah, I'm going climbing 3 times a week. I'm taking time to journal for myself. This is going awesome. And then March 16th hit, and that just went up in smoke. So I've had to rebuild those routines, and I'm still working on it. It's still a work in progress.
No joke, I started swimming again. So swimming, like for you climbing, I figured that out in college, and I go, this is a spot that's introverted. My face is literally in the water. In the water. I can't hear anything. You're just in the water. That's it. And it's great because when you're done, cool. No one could talk to me, and I couldn't hear them. So it's perfect. And then March 16th happened, and then I go, crap, what am I supposed to do now? And then I go, well, last year when I didn't want to pay the swimming fees to go to a pool, I put on a rucksack, and I would walk around because walking's good for you, but I found it too boring unless I had something else to do. So now we're doing that more often, and because people have less to do, more people are interested, and we're starting to do that more within the AFC community. So where I'm working now, and that's been cool. I can maybe get people to do it maybe once every 3 months, and now all of a sudden it's, hey, you know, I'm bored. It's cool. Let's schedule Friday.
Nice. The extroverts, they really show up right now.
Yeah, they're hurting.
Your lawn and they'd be there.
They are hurting so bad because let me out of this house now. Yeah. I mean, and we got to have some sympathy for them because, well, they do get energy by going out and doing something with people. If that's their supply line.
Yeah.
They can only watch Netflix for so long before there's going to be an outcry.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I think that'll be something we start figuring out is how do we, you know, integrate that and do that responsibly. You know, that's the whole thing with this is how do we do this responsibly and get everyone's buy-in in. That's difficult.
Just a little because, I mean, we're going, I mean, yeah, we could keep going if need to, and then you got the other end of the continuum going, we can't stand another day of being inside. We want to live and be free. Okay. Well, there's that then, huh? Yeah, it's been tough. I know.
Yeah.
So, I had a question about your engineering worldview. So, what have you learned about work and how you've been able to incorporate that into your worldview?
Mm. Um, as I've like engineering is such one thing I learned is that engineering is so vast, and it's really broad, but it can also be really deep. Like you just think about some of the disciplines, and I don't really like stereotypes, but they kind of work. Like if you ever meet a structural guy, you've met at least several other structural guys like him,
It's a
or
persona.
gals for that matter. That
Right.
persona, um, that persona shows up, and I think part of that is molded by the work that they do and kind of the rigors that they're under comparatively. They work in a very solid world of like, this is my rebar, this is my concrete. They go together and do this, and they know how that all works together, and that they've got really good inputs into their system. And then you work with a civil site designer, and our inputs change all the time, and so we have a little bit more of a loose, you know, or we tend to have a little bit more loose view of how things go together, and kind of just it's a less rigid, and so sometimes you can see that in their personalities, how they kind of open up and they're just different. um, so engineering's really broad yet deep, and you can kind of find out wherever you want to be in there, um, and it's hard to kind of know going in. But I know something that I've really enjoyed about the engineering world is that it really falls back into almost an apprenticeship, especially in kind of your professional or licensed engineers. Usually you have your head engineer, your senior level engineer, and they're you know running things at the top level, but they're also pouring down into the people below them. Um, and you kind of learn, you're encouraged to learn from the people around you. Um, and so I've really enjoyed that. You know, and one thing about the engineering world that I think is interesting is like we're encouraged to be like outgoing and pursue new ways to solve problems, but we're also pretty conservative. A lot of times we're like, I don't think so. Numbers aren't good enough. Those numbers look good, but they don't look good enough for me to to go ahead and do this. Not to say we disregard data, but I'm saying it's got to prove itself above and beyond before we're going to put our livelihood and the people that we design for's livelihood and integrity on. So it's just an interesting world.
I'd say something similar. I know I've had a different experience in the chemi world, but PE actually in California at least has become less of a priority, which is kind of weird. You think that would matter, but for some reason it doesn't. I'm not exactly sure why, other than PE is not being required in a lot of states for chemis, and I still don't exactly understand why, but it's been good to actually just be at work for once. That's been the last couple of years. It's just been, I'm stop moving and changing roles and whatever. Just be able to cruise a little bit and learn some of the nuances that you just don't have time for when you're always changing.
Yeah.
So the last 2 years I've been doing about the same thing. The roles changed every year, but the degree of change finally shrunk to the point where I go, as much as it did change, I'm not worried about it. Like, if you asked me about this 3 years ago, I just had my role change every year, and it's directly impacted what I need to learn. Where now it's more, it's not as big of a change, but it's still kind of annoying. I'll deal with it. Still a change, but not to the point where I'm coming home with it and saying, my life has changed to the point where I got to learn for another year about something different at the plant, let's say.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad you've had that.
And
I'm I'm finally, it's starting to kind of get there, but everything changes for me.
Well, and it does for us too in terms of products. I mean, we're changing clients all the time. So clients change, then there's a chemistry change, different drug, different way of getting it processed. But you start seeing the pattern of, okay, react, put your stuff together, get your samples, separate it, crystallize it, filter it, dry it. You're going to have some kind of liquid solid relationship to eventually just a solid. That's usually how it goes. Okay, so we know the dance on the flow diagram, but what's the differences in the little boxes? Okay, well, that's where we got to hash it out. Oh, we're using different salts, we're using water, are we using solvents that are flammable? Oh, we're using something pretty dangerous. Okay, but we got the engineering controls. Okay, and you just keep going. But it's weird. We've done, so I can at least count on, as far as planned codes, we've done somewhere in the hundreds of different processes that I've been able to find. I mean, that number could probably change if I dug a little more, but just to know that's on the order of hundreds of processes. I mean, it's just, how do you even learn them all? And the answer is you don't. You just learn what you have to and navigate through as best you can.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely resonate with that a little bit. I mean, with some of the engineering I do, it changes. You cross this, not imaginary, but this decided boundary line, and the whole world is different. I mean, but as soon as you're in that boundary line, we talk about boundary conditions, they change real fast. So that's been interesting.
Sure, and then once you've crossed the boundary, you go, ground rules. Like, just take it slow. What do you really want? Those kind of questions start popping up instead of, well, I'll just treat it like I did on the last job. What was your last job? Not the same thing. Right. So take it slow. Find out what they actually want. Different job scope, different client. Okay.
Yeah. So those are always changing, and that's definitely something about engineering that I think that's later on, but whatever. Man, learning how to deal with people is a lot bigger part of the engineering world. Learning how to communicate with people is really important. Half of my time is, I might do a simple calculation, and then I've got to essentially tell somebody who may not have the same degree as I do, doesn't have the same vocabulary, what I did and why it's right. And I've got to tailor that for everybody from the guy on the backhoe to the professor that wrote the manual. So it's really vast, but being able to communicate effectively is really important.
And it varies into what personnel you're having to deal with. So the guy on the backhoe might be more direct. Move this dirt here. Okay, how much time do I got? Okay. Versus the guy that's more on the right-hand scale in the professor area. Well, I'm going to want more justifications, and how could I trust your data? And it turns into this, fine, justification, explanation, calculation, conclusion. You've got to put in a nice bundle for them. Here, this is my justification for everything. Took a little longer. Then they say, well, I need another change. Oh, great. Let's do this again. Another change control. Yep. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's been something that's been interesting for me. Is like, I really enjoy design, and I pour a lot of myself into it, even though it sounds weird saying that, but because I'm just plugging in numbers and using these methods to get to my end result. But I'm usually pretty proud of it. I don't know whether I should be or not, but I'm usually pretty proud of it, and I put a lot of effort into it. But I mean, you can have somebody, the client, just be like, I don't like the way that looks. I'm like, I spent 8 hours yesterday on this thing, and you just don't like how it looks. Well, okay, I'll start over. Um, and so that's been something like realizing that engineering really is an iterative process. Um, not all of it's cut and dry the first time. Some of it is. Some of it we can get to pretty close to, yeah, this we're going to start here and we're going to end here. That's just how it's going to be. But a lot of it is in this kind of minutia area of, that kind of worked, but I think I can do better. And really knowing where that line is. I have one of the engineers I work with. I really enjoy his company. One of the things he always tells me is like, pretty much with calculations, reports, and drawings, you really just have to find out where you're going to call a truce, because they're never 100% perfect.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing because that's right. I mean, it's, well, I actually want this boundary condition. Well, that changes the calculation, you know. Yeah, I know, but then somebody else chimes in. Well, actually, I want it smaller. Okay, when there's a consensus, I'll do the math for you. All right? All right.
Yeah. Well, like in anything you write, you can always sit there and go, oh, I think I could write that better, or maybe I could tweak it so this guy knows it better. But, at some point, you've got to just be like, all right, this is good enough for most people or for my desired audience, and I might have to tell somebody who's not my desired audience. I might have to walk them through it. So yeah, but that's been something that really helped me. Just be like, okay, I have my standard level of care. I need to meet that and not get hung up on going 1,000 miles further than I need to. Because you go from a factor of safety of 1.5 to 1.55 with an extra 7 hours of work, and you kind of have to make that judgment call of, is it worth it? And that's been something that I've had to figure out as I move on, and still figuring out.
I think the direction of continuing to figure it out is healthy, and I think that in itself is already the right direction. Otherwise, you just think, oh, well, I've reached where I need to be. I'm just going to maintain. Well, at some point, you might start seeing a degradation in your knowledge. So, pointing up may actually help you keep a good trajectory instead of just having a slow decline. And I wanted to ask about how this all compares to the academic world, and because I remember looking at it for me, and I go, yeah, academia is so far the other way sometimes. But I do appreciate the fact that they do help, technical writing, getting the calculations done, all that stuff. But for you, I'm curious how it differed.
I have viewed academia, and this view has changed as I've gotten farther and farther away from it. I remember, being in college and going, man, this doesn't apply at all. Why do I have to learn this thing? It's really hard. I don't like it. I don't get it. It's frustrating. But I guess I got to do it. But I think that academia and its role is to support the practice world. To support the application of engineering in many situations. Academia is there to slowly ease students into the skills that they need, and to adjust to the rigors of the design world that they're going to be working in. You're put under really strict timelines, but I don't know many engineers who are like, yeah, I don't worry about deadlines. Most of us have to do, I got to get this in by this date. I've got a bunch of people waiting to do something because on me. So you adjust to that. I didn't think about that when I was in academia, because I was just worried about the thing that was in front of me and how stressful that timeline was. So I think that it helps you build those skills, um, and in some ways helps you learn how to learn, um, because you really can't teach. Like I talked about before, engineering is so broad. You cannot teach everything you need to know, even about a specific discipline, in 4 years. Um, at least you're not going to be able to get 90% of the people to all of the things they need to know, in 4 years. That's just difficult. Um, but you're supposed to teach people how to learn, um, and give them a base to work off of. I remember I had an engineer when I was in at Cal Poly, and one of the things he said was like, Cal Poly graduates don't know anything. You know, they get out of college and they don't know anything. So, well, they know some things. You just expect them to be uh, an engineer with 12 years experience before you take them seriously. And it's like, well, that's not what this is designed for. I don't think that's the intent of academia, to push out somebody who's ready to, you know, accept full responsibility for whatever they're designing. I think the world is just too vast, and there's so many things that go into every little piece of engineering to really assume that somebody would be able to get out with what they need. Um, and then also, like on the research side, you know, that is there to help the people who are out in the practice world figure out problems and be confident with the methods and the ways that they problem solve. You know, because if I go out and I look at, you know, a site and I've got a stormwater problem and I go, I think this works, and here's my conclusion for it, and it's just really all on me, that's not going to fly with anybody. They're going to look at me and they're going to go, what's in my manual? You know, what's in the state's manual? What's in the national engineer's manual? If it's not in there, like, it's an uphill battle to figure that out. And I think that academia supports that with saying, oh yeah, no, that idea that we figured out right here, now we've put some stuff behind it, now we've tested it, now we've seen its limits, and we're better able to accept it and move forward and use it. So that's kind of how I see academia, but that's kind of a hindsight 2020. And I was in a very, I mean, Cal Poly, thankfully for me, was really about learn by doing. They really drove that home. So, I mean, I would learn something, and then they would pull up a direct, you know, as you know, with doing engineering design, usually it's about breaking it up into those little steps. So they would really focus on, you know, sorry, I'm gonna let that guy go by. Okay, he's gone. They would teach you that little piece, and then usually within about a week, they would come back and be like, all right, here's this bigger portion of the problem. I want you to solve this little piece that I taught you how to do a week ago. And then they would also take you out and make you look at it or do something with your hands to like cement, you know, why is this important? Why is this principle? Why do I need to know how to solve this equation? Like, what does it tell me? What is its boundaries? So, I mean, that was really helpful for me. But then again, Cal Poly's not really they do research, but that's not their focus.
Which, and for UCD, I mean, we're a little further on the academic spectrum. I mean, they're just, okay, here's your high quality education, but you've got to work and keep doing the paperwork. And if you can get hands-on, that's great, but that's not going to be the emphasis. And Cal Poly for sure has the emphasis of, no, we're gonna do learning a little more hands-on, and we're gonna actually outpace some of the other colleges in that regard to the point where Cal Poly is today.
Yeah.
So with all that, we're getting close to the end of questions. I did have a couple more, if that's okay.
Oh, that's fine.
So for managing a home, This is something I'm not there yet. I'm not a homeowner. I want to be one at some point. I want a place to call home. I want to know what you've learned about maintaining a home since you got one over in Tennessee several years ago.
Mm. Man, one thing that I've learned about like maintaining a home as somebody who has gone to engineering college and has learned that skill set um, is that I can get lost in the minutia and just over design stuff. I'd be putting in a fence and I'm like looking at the loading of the gate and like what size, sizing the the fence post and all this stuff when I really just need to go out and get a 6x6 and put it 4 feet in the ground and throw some concrete in it. Like that's a little over designed, but I don't need to go in and design my own fence post. Like there are details out there for that. And that's usually something that gets me is I just get lost. Like we're gonna build a deck, and all of a sudden I'm going through the design manual provided by the Wood Council on how to design this deck from the bottom up, and then I spend 50 hours designing the thing, and then 50 hours later I haven't even put a post in the ground, and sometimes I've lost my motivation at that point. I'm like, oh well, I'm not gonna do that anymore.
You solved the problem intellectually, and then nah, we can forget the post.
I'm good now. I'm tired from all that intellectual work. I'm gonna take a break now. So one thing about it for me, it's been really. We have an older home. It's a 1930s home with probably an 80s edition on it, and a lot of the work was done by the homeowner in the addition, and it drives me up the wall. Like simple things like not mudding over sheetrock screws and like just nothing square, and it drives me nuts. And I really have to like reel myself back in and realize, I don't have to rip all of the sheetrock off the walls. That's not necessarily the best solution, is to go in and rip all the sheetrock out and redo it the right way. Some things, if it's structural, I need to do that. But some of the more aesthetic things, they just need to work. They just need to work. Now that doesn't mean I don't try to make everything square. I still do that. Thankfully, I learned enough from my dad and doing construction to at least make sure my window frame is square. But it's also just a mess because this house is built, like I said, in the 30s, and it's settled, and everything's old. So, like, there are true 2x4s in this house. It's a balloon framed house with true 2x4s. So it's actually 2 inches by 4 inches for every stud. So when I go down to Home Depot and pick up a 2x4 and try and put in just a simple wall, I then find out that I have to go back in and put like a 3/4 inch strip on every stud so that it lines up flat. And so it's just been interesting. And it's been a challenge to kind of piece together how this whole thing has gone. But I think one of the important things I've learned about being a homeowner and managing that is kind of just get stuff started. Start with the small steps. Say, hey, I want to do this. I want to do this deck. Well, let's see if somebody's already done a deck that's very similar. I can check the calculations, but I don't have to remake them all. And then just what's the first step? What's the first thing you have to do? Because there are so many things around a home that if you are meticulous and have to have things a certain way, you'll drive yourself nuts. there are very few contractors who everyone in that crew is as meticulous as you may be, or even the lead quality guy. You know, houses are built by everybody on the spectrum, so it may not be, right to a quarter, to a 10,000th, but when you're putting a wall up and you're going to throw sheetrock mud on it, that thousandth really doesn't matter. So just getting started and being okay with it being right, but not perfect.
It's good to know. I've been seeing a few other friends deal with this kind of problem with their own starter homes, and I could see how it drives them nuts. 100%. You come home from work, and then you just look at another project. It never stopped. There's not even kids involved, and it never stopped. It's unbelievable. Then I'll call them up about it. Hey, how's it going? And they go, yeah, I got to replace my HVAC because I just bought this home and it doesn't have an HVAC up to par because it's about to die. Or, hey, it's not even up to standard code, but we just found out about it. Now the state wants us to pay $12,000 for a new HVAC. I mean, those are stressful things. And coming home to that, I can only imagine what that does to your psyche if you don't find ways to, look, it doesn't even take care of immediately, but let's just do the one incremental step at a time, which we talk about all on this podcast. It's really funny. Julian, he brought that up really early on, and it's one of those reoccurring themes. But we can't stress it enough. I mean, you really got to do one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And definitely one thing that I've learned is, like, do your research when you're fixing stuff, because you can fix a lot of things. I mean, I fixed my HVAC unit. I blew a capacitor on it, and I finally got out there and was like, oh, this guy's blown. And, I ordered a $5 capacitor, and my HVAC has been running now for 6 months, compared to I would have paid the guy $75 just for the site visit and not for any of his time or any parts. So, like, if you take the time to troubleshoot, you can fix some stuff. You don't always have to go out and buy a full new replacement for stuff. Some stuff just needs a little bit, a little piece or a little part that you can fix. You got a leaky faucet. You don't have to take the whole thing out and get a new one. Let's see if there's a gasket on that spigot that needs to get fixed. So
I learned that the hard way on one of my faucets. I mean, it's just, there's no water flow. Maybe I should call somebody. And then, wait a minute. And you just type it in. I finally cared enough one day to actually fix it. And go, okay, well, what if I replace the filter that's actually above it? Oh, okay. So I take a wrench out, and then sure enough, I mean, you see it plugged, and you go, oh, no wonder. Flush it a little bit. Oh, I bought this 5-pack for $6 or whatever. Screw it on. Before you know it, 1.5 gallons per minute. It works. It hasn't worked for 7 months. It works now. It's fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
You just won your sink back for $6.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of stress and a little bit of work. And P-traps for me was another one. Oh, my sink's clogged. Okay, well, there's an engineering design there. We have a low point. Well, heck, I mean, my sink can drain now. It's amazing. There's a bunch of sludge that was at the bottom preventing flow. Oh, that's simple.
Yeah. That's definitely one thing about, like, maintaining a home, is there's a lot of maintenance that you should do. And I don't think, like, I was taught some of it, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Like, I remember when I first thought about buying a house, like, I was always like, oh man, I'm gonna have to mow a lawn every week. Ugh. And in Tennessee, that is the case. Throughout all of summer, if you don't mow your lawn like once a week, it is knee high, and you're going to be hitting it with a weed whacker first. So, like, I was really worried about that, but then I started realizing that there's all sorts of stuff that you kind of got to keep up with. And if you're able to be organized about it, a lot of this stuff has like a manual that says, "Hey, clean out your filter every 6 months." Um, and so if you have the time, you have the energy and the motivation, go ahead and just set it up on a calendar so that you can just something to remind you, because it's not always that apparent. I mean, you didn't clean out your P traps until it was a problem. When you could have just said, "I'm just going to run some extra hot water," or, "I've got a snake and I'm just going to run it through every, 6 months." Just take 5 minutes, snake the drain, even if it isn't bad, and move on. Um, and that way you don't go 6 months with a really low faucet.
I did. I really did. I didn't care enough, and it's just it's another problem. Whatever. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Quitting is forever. Until finally, it's just you get mad enough where you go, I'll do it now, and then before you know it, that's how I. Oh, okay, and then okay, that's getting drained. But what's the relief? I mean, the faucet, use it every day, but I mean, I went from a faucet I didn't like using to a faucet that I do like using. That's it.
That's simple.
I have one last question for you, Darren, about what you would say to people who wanted to learn but aren't sure about getting their life together. So this is about the life lessons learned concept.
Okay. I think I had this pointed. Like, my initial thought is about kind of college and learning that way, but I think that pulling back and looking at it from a broader perspective, um, if you want to learn, one of the things is find somebody who's passionate about the thing you want to learn, and go find out what that is. And start with baby steps on what you're trying to do. Like you said, it's a reoccurring thing. Do that first small thing. Just do the first thing and get it done. I think about if you're interested at all in engineering or that world, go find like an old engineer's handbook, and you can find an old one, because learning how things work and learning how to approach a problem systematically with kind of a design and engineering mindset, it's a learned skill. Some people have a better knack for it, but it's a learned skill, and you've got to practice that. I mean, you think about, even when you come out of college with an engineering degree, you've only had so many hours of doing this. Doing this one thing that you're supposed to know how to do really well. And you've still got things to do to improve that. And you spend hundreds and thousands of hours during college, just looking at a problem, determining the correct, solution to get there, and then doing it. And you do that over and over again. And so, but it starts with the first time you do it. Now, thankfully, in college, you've usually seen some of that before. You've seen it in a math class, how to approach a problem. And you've seen it further that, like, I don't know what this number is as a small child. I don't know what this number is. They're going to help me learn what it is. And so you have to remember, when you're picking up something that's not familiar, it really comes down to taking those baby steps, and really having a little grace with yourself. It's really hard to be a master at something the very first time you do it. And really, honestly, it's the second time that's harder, because you can be lucky the first time and think you're awesome, but it's really the second time when you realize, oh man, I don't know what's going on. But that's the learning part.
Beginner's luck. Yeah, I'm shaking my head because, yeah, I've been there. Oh, I did great the first time. Condition changes about 0.5%. I don't know what's going on anymore. And
yeah.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say if you want to learn or you want to better yourself, really see if there's something that, well, trying to think before I talk here. If you're trying to learn, um, see if you can listen to the voice inside you. You know, we've all got something that tells us, hey, you know, this feels right or this doesn't feel right. Whether you're in touch with it or not, it's there. It may have gotten lost by society and you telling it not to be there, but it's probably there. Try and listen to that and find the one thing to, one thing that gets you just a little bit closer to where you want to be. And, if you're lost, if you don't know, find a person who has what you're looking for or who you think has what you're looking for and talk to them about it because they've done it. They know what it takes. Or they can at least tell you what they did and you can try and find out how it happened. So yeah, start with the small steps, and if you don't know, find somebody who does. And if nobody knows, then find out what you need to know to figure it out. That's the whole world of science. I have no idea what this principle is. Well, how do I even measure it? I don't know. I'm about to find a way to measure it. How do I figure that out? Well, I find out how people measure stuff now. So, and yeah.
That's
what
taking
about you, Jacob?
for me.
What about you?
For learning in this context, I'm a big mentorship guy. Okay, so we did this in school. I've got podcasts on it. That's probably one of the best things I've been able to do because you're investing in one human being at a time. You eventually work into something that turns into something you never would have seen unless you continue to do so. So I'd say find a mentor. A lot of people don't just do it, but you'd be surprised if you'd come up to the people that you think, I'm really interested in learning about whatever, and I don't know how to get there. Maybe they'll show you how to get there, and you might even make a friendship out of it. For me, a lot of mentees, they ended up being great friends, and I'm going, how in the world this happened? This is the way the world's supposed to go. I guess so. There's something right about it. The person teaching definitely feels the responsibility if they're doing it right, but then they also have the sense to make it fun, make it educational, fun, not as formal. And before you know it, you might actually be getting somewhere. So mentorship would be one way. The second way is you actually might find there's more online sources nowadays to be able to get you to where you might need to go. So maybe you can't find them in person, but maybe you can talk to people you can in person, but you compare it with what engineers are saying online and on public forums like Reddit or just any other forums that you can find on Google. You'd be surprised what you can find from that too. And I would say for long term, for the people who really want to learn, you got to find yourself in a local environment where you can do that. So make the plans necessary to find a way to get to where you need to go. So that way you don't have a life where, like Porterville, the one thing about Porterville you and me both were talking about earlier was we know we can't stay here and actually build a foundation. So we got to find a way out. And we said, we'll find a way to get connections, but not here. So we will do what we can to build the bridge to find our way out of Porterville into somewhere that has a community that can do this. And it took time. It took our entire young adult life up to 18 to do it. But it was necessary. It was 100% necessary, and it got us somewhere. So for everyone who feels like they just can't leave, actually you can. It just might take a lot longer than expected, but work towards it. You might eventually find yourself in a spot where you'll be able to plug in and it won't be such a big deal. And you go, why didn't I do this sooner? So those would be my additions to what you said about getting people interested in learning and finding a way to get up the food chain if they don't know how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and I kind of want to say something real quick on that. You talked about mentoring, and I talked a little earlier about how engineering is kind of built on mentoring and apprenticeship. Most states still allow you to become an engineer, a licensed engineer without having a degree. Now you have to take a lot longer to do it, but you can do that. You know, if a degree is not something you can do, see if you can go work for an engineer and slowly progress where you need to go. Maybe that's a more achievable step than, um, you know, trying to change where you are and go to college. Um, you know, maybe that plan needs to be a little bit more long term than you're expecting. Um, it's a possibility. It's not easy, and you've got a lot of hurdles to jump over, but it's still a possibility, and maybe that's an avenue that works for you.
And with that, keep in mind, I mean, engineering, even the typical way, it wasn't easy, as you may have heard from the podcast. So if you want to get into engineering, keep in mind it's gonna be a hurdle no matter what. So don't try and think you're gonna get into this. Oh, I'm gonna fast track it. Well, the fast track is just to do it. That's the only fast track we were able to find. It was okay. They have a program. We're gonna do it from an accredited school. We're gonna find people that we can to get through it. And if we can't, we'll just keep trying every day. Learn to fail a lot. I think that's something in engineering people don't say enough. Learn to fail a lot. That's okay. You may find yourself failing 100 times, but that 101st time, before you know it, that might spur you on to do something that you never would have been able to do unless you failed a lot. Music was like that too for us back in the day. I mean, you didn't just stop when you had a bad note. I mean, you play through it in improv. You play through it or take a breath and try again. It's not a thing you can just quit on. So don't quit, keep going, find a way forward, and be prepared to fail. And that's okay. I think we live in a very sterilized society now where you can't fail. It's just, okay, fine, you can have that mentality, but just find a place where you can fail safely. Find somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So I got through all the questions here, Mr. Darren. I'm really glad that we were able to spend time on this and put some time in on the calendar for this podcast. I was looking forward to it for a while, and we actually got through it. We got it. We did it.
Yeah. Pretty great. Wasn't that bad? It's kind of like just hanging out with a friend.
That was kind of the idea.
Weird.
I know, right? So I'll effectively end the recording now. But for everyone watching, thanks again. It's always been fun. We'll catch you next time.